were all it took to shatter silence forever. Because the moment the first human voice escaped the limits of wires and traveled invisibly through the air, the world stopped being quiet, isolated, and distant, and instead became connected by something no one could see, touch, or fully understand. And long before music filled cars, news echoed in kitchens, or voices spoke to millions at once. The very idea that sound could fly through empty space felt like magic bordering on madness. Because for nearly all of human history, communication was trapped inside physical limits, bound to the strength of a voice, the speed of a messenger, the endurance of a horse, or the fragile path of written letters, and anything beyond shouting distance belonged to silence. And this story does not begin with entertainment or convenience, but with curiosity, obsession, and a deep human need to reach beyond distance. Because humans have always feared silence as much as darkness, and the desire to send a message beyond the horizon has existed for as long as civilization itself, from smoke signals and drums to carrier pigeons and signal fires, all early attempts to defeat distance. Yet none carried the human voice itself, and when the telegraph arrived in the 19th century, it changed the world by allowing messages to travel faster than any human or animal, but it stripped communication down to dots and dashes. Efficient yet emotionless, precise yet silent, and while it revolutionized industry and warfare, it still left humanity longing for something more natural, more human, the sound of a real voice traveling freely. And it was within this gap between silent signals and living sound that the dream of radio was born, a dream to send not symbols but voices, not pulses but emotion, not messages but presence. And this dream began taking shape as scientists slowly realized that the air itself was not empty but filled with invisible waves, electromagnetic vibrations traveling constantly through space. And early thinkers theorized that if these waves could be controlled, they could carry information without wires. And in the late 19th century, this idea moved from theory into experiment as inventors across Europe and America began playing with sparks, coils, antennas, and receivers, often without fully understanding the forces they were awakening. And among the many minds exploring this invisible world was Nikola Tesla, who envisioned wireless communication and demonstrated radio-based experiments years before the technology was commercially viable, believing that information itself could be broadcast through the earth and air. And although Tesla's work laid crucial theoretical foundations, the race to turn wireless signals into practical communication intensified. And it was an Italian inventor named Guglielmo Marconi who succeeded in transforming scattered experiments into a working system of wireless telegraphy. And in the 1890s, Marconi proved that radio waves could travel long distances, first across fields, then across the sea, and eventually across the Atlantic Ocean, a moment that stunned the world and proved that messages no longer needed wires to survive. And although Marconi's early radio could only transmit coded signals, not sound, it marked the birth of radio as a practical technology, and slowly engineers refined transmitters and receivers, learning how to stabilize signals, amplify waves, and tune frequencies. And as the 20th century began, radio shifted from laboratory curiosity into global infrastructure, becoming essential for ships at sea, military communication, and emergency signaling, saving countless lives and redefining navigation and warfare. Yet the true revolution came when radio stopped transmitting codes and began transmitting voices. Because when the first human speech and music traveled through the air, radio transformed from a technical achievement into a cultural force. And suddenly, communication was no longer one-to-one, but one-to-many, a single voice capable of reaching thousands, then millions simultaneously. And in the early 1920s, the first public radio broadcasts emerged, filling the air with music, news, and spoken words, and families gathered around bulky wooden receivers, leaning in as if listening to a living presence trapped inside a box. And radio did something no technology had ever done before. It created shared time, moments where entire nations listened to the same voice at the same instant, collapsing distance not visually as television would later do, but emotionally, through sound alone. And during this golden age, radio became the heartbeat of society, delivering entertainment, education, weather, sports, and breaking news directly into homes, shaping language, accents, humor, and imagination, because radio demanded participation, forcing listeners to visualize stories, scenes, and characters in their minds, turning audiences into active creators of meaning. And its power soon became undeniable to governments and leaders who realized that radio could unify nations or manipulate them, inspire hope or spread fear. And during times of crisis, radio became the most trusted companion of humanity, especially during war, when radio carried speeches that lifted morale, news that shaped perception, and warnings that saved lives. And for soldiers far from home and families waiting in fear, radio was a lifeline, a human voice cutting through uncertainty. And figures like Franklin Roosevelt, with his fireside chats, demonstrated how radio could create intimacy between leaders and citizens, making power sound personal and reassuring. And as radio technology improved with clearer signals, better microphones, and wider coverage, it spread rapidly across the globe, crossing borders without passports, carrying music styles, cultural ideas, and political messages into places that had never experienced such connection. And radio helped create global culture long before the internet existed, introducing jazz, classical music, drama, comedy, and storytelling to millions who might never have seen a stage or concert hall. And yet radio's dominance was eventually challenged by a new invention that added images to sound: television, which shifted attention from imagination to vision. And many believed radio would disappear. But instead, radio adapted, retreating from living rooms into cars, workplaces, and personal spaces, becoming more intimate rather than less. And with the rise of FM radio, sound quality improved, music flourished, and radio became the soundtrack of daily life, accompanying commutes, work, and solitude. And even as digital technology emerged and streaming platforms reshaped media, radio continued evolving, transforming into podcasts, online broadcasts, and satellite radio, proving that the human connection created by voice alone remains powerful regardless of medium. And when we ask who invented radio, the answer, like so many great inventions, is complex and shared, because radio was not the work of one man or one moment, but a chain of discovery, with Nikola Tesla imagining wireless communication, Guglielmo Marconi making it practical, and countless engineers, scientists, and broadcasters turning invisible waves into a living global network. And today, in a world filled with screens, algorithms, and endless images, radio remains uniquely intimate, requiring no eyes, no light, no visual distraction, only listening. And its legacy is not just technological, but emotional, because radio taught humanity how to listen across distance, how to trust unseen voices, and how to feel connected without seeing faces. And as we move deeper into a future of artificial intelligence, immersive media, and instant global communication, radio stands as the ancestor of them all, the first technology that proved the air itself could carry human presence, reminding us that sometimes the most powerful revolutions are not seen but heard, and that a single voice traveling through empty space can change history, comfort millions, inspire movements, and make the vast world feel just a little smaller, a little warmer, and far less silent than it once was. If you want next,